The auction house was packed with people, yet it didn't feel crowded at all. The layout was clearly designed to perfection. Chen and the 9 others sat in the front section. The seats were made from jade, covered with soft fur. Sitting on them, one could faintly feel spiritual energy flowing into their bodies. It was clear that both the jade and the fur were not ordinary materials. The scale of this auction was far beyond anything Chen had ever seen before. After Chen and 9 others sat down, a girl named Lin Jing also sat beside him. She was quite beautiful, with porcelain-like white skin, delicate as fine china. Dressed as a boy, she carried a unique charm, endearing to anyone who saw her. However, when Chen noticed her following closely, he shot her a glare. "Don't chase me away. I'm just here to watch," Lin Jing said quickly, her hands clasped together in a pleading gesture. Her appearance was quite pitiful, almost heart-melting. However, in her bright eyes, there was a mischievous glint, like a little fox. Chen wasn't fooled. He rolled his eyes and said, "Stop pretending. Isn't meeting each other fate? You're too cold-hearted," Lin Jing huffed. "Since you're here, you can stay. But no causing trouble." 9 others smiled faintly and glanced at the girl. "You're still the best, sister." Lin Jing flattered 9 others sweetly. "Don't worry. As long as no one bothers me, I won't cause any trouble." Chen rolled his eyes, but there was a hint of amusement in his gaze. He did feel a bit of affection for the girl he had only just met. After all, she had been helped by him twice. To be honest, pretty girls always had some advantages, though Chen didn't have any ulterior motives. Once the 3 of them were seated, Lin Jing couldn't stay still. She kept chatting with Chen. Her clear, melodic voice was like jade beads falling on a silver plate, pleasant to the ears, almost enjoyable. The girl's lively and refreshing personality was nothing like the serene calmness suggested by her name. As they spoke, Chen noticed several groups of people arriving, seemingly from prestigious forces. These individuals were of high status and went straight to the small balconies at the front of the auction house. Clearly, this auction had attracted several heavyweight figures. This auction has attracted at least 5 waves of famous big forces. But I think the most threatening one might be that guy from the Celestial Profound Hall, 9 others murmured. That guy's position in the Celestial Profound Hall must be quite high. The old man in black beside him is incredibly strong. I think he's reached the 5th grade supreme level. With that kind of power, he must be an elder at Celestial Profound Hall, 9 others continued. 5th grade supreme? Chen's gaze sharpened, his face growing serious. If someone of that strength was guarding him, it meant that the effeminate young man must be an important figure in the Celestial Profound Hall. If that guy was also here for the Void Solar Fruit and the Immortal Divine Leaf, then today's events might not end well. Although Chen did possess some supreme spiritual liquid thanks to the Spirit Gathering Bowl, the guy had Celestial Profound Hall backing him up, which made him a formidable opponent. That bastard's from Celestial Profound Hall. Lin Jing snorted. "What's so great about that? Don't worry. If he dares to cause trouble for you, I'll teach him a lesson." It seemed she was quite irritated that this annoying guy had dared to harass her. "Thanks," Chen responded, rolling his eyes at her. He clearly regarded her words as nothing more than venting. Since Celestial Profound Hall was one of the top forces on the Tianluo continent and incredibly powerful, Lin Jing was immediately angered by his response, her brows furrowing. But then she remembered she had sneaked out of her home without any preparations. Biting her silver teeth, she muttered under her breath, short-sighted. As time passed, the atmosphere in the auction house began to peak. Finally, a pillar of light shot up from the center of the auction house, and faintly, the sound of a bell chime echoed through the air. A white-robed elder suddenly appeared in the beam of light. His hair and beard were both white, and his expression was stern and serious, exuding an air of utmost authority. Such a demeanor usually wasn't suited for hosting an auction, but after he appeared, the auction hall fell into an unusual silence. Soon, a murmur of amazement began to spread through the crowd. This auction is actually being hosted by Master Mo Qing. Looks like this event is of quite high caliber. Indeed, Master Mo Qing is the chief auctioneer of Commerce City. He can distinguish the authenticity of any treasure with just a glance. For ordinary auctions, he wouldn't even show up. Seems like we've come to the right place this time. Chen heard the whispers around him, and his eyes showed some surprise. He glanced at the white-robed elder, not expecting the latter to be so famous. This old man's power must be around the third grade supreme. Nine Nether observed the elder closely and spoke. Mu Chen clicked his tongue in awe. This was indeed the great Thousand Worlds. Even a chief auctioneer could possess the strength of a third grade supreme. In the Northern Song Spiritual Academy, someone with that level of power would be considered one of the top elders. Of course, even here, Master Mo Qing's status was extraordinary. Amid the whispers, the white-robed elder, named Mo Qing, scanned the surroundings. His gaze lingered on the high balconies before clasping his hands and saying, "I greet all of you. Let today's auction officially begin. As many of you may know, my rule is that whenever I host an auction, only 10 items will be sold. But rest assured, their quality will satisfy everyone." The elder's words carried a hint of pride, but no one dared to refute him. It was clear that everyone was familiar with his rules by now. Interesting, Mu Chen thought with a smile. It was the first time he'd seen such a distinctive auctioneer. Only 10 items. That meant each one had to be carefully selected. His curiosity was piqued. He was eager to see what rare treasures Master Mo Qing would pick. Under the countless eager gazes, the white-robed elder waved his hand, and a light sphere appeared. Inside the sphere was a small ship, emitting boundless light, with subtle spatial fluctuations radiating from it. This is a spatial ship, a low-grade divine artifact. It has no offensive power, but its speed is unparalleled. Even a 6th grade supreme would struggle to catch up with it, Master Mo Qing said with a faint smile. The starting price is 2,000 supreme spiritual liquid. The crowd was in an uproar. A speed-focused divine artifact. While it was only low-grade and had no offensive capabilities, its speed, which even a 6th grade supreme couldn't match, was enough to astonish everyone. With this artifact, escaping a life-threatening pursuit would be a piece of cake. While the artifact lacked offensive power, its speed more than made up for it. Mu Chen's eyes lit up with interest, but the price of 2,000 supreme spiritual liquid made him hesitate. He couldn't afford to waste his limited spiritual liquid right now. He had to save up for 2 specific treasures he needed. 2,100. Several powerful figures in the hall raised their bids, as safety was the top priority in this world. Having such an escape artifact could be a lifesaver. 2,300. 2,500. In just a minute, the price of the spatial ship skyrocketed from 2,000 to 3,000 supreme spiritual liquid. The bids then started to taper off, as 3,000 was no small amount. For a 5th grade supreme, it would take almost half a year of continuous refining to gather that much. Finally, the spatial ship was sold for 3,100 supreme spiritual liquid to a thin, middle-aged man. Mu Chen couldn't help but quietly admire the auction. It seemed like this event was definitely worth attending. Each treasure was a true eye-opener. Next, we present the second item. After the bidding ended, the white-robed elder waved his hand again, and another light sphere emerged. Inside it was a fiery red liquid, flowing like magma. As it moved, flames danced within it, radiating intense heat, making the entire auction hall feel hotter. This is heavenly fire jade marrow, refined from the deepest part of the magma ocean. The fire jade takes 10,000 years to form into jade marrow. Among the 99 levels of supreme dharmakayas, it is said that some powerful bodies require this material, Master Mo Qing explained. Countless gazes turned toward it. The heavenly fire jade marrow was indeed a rare and valuable item, but its use was somewhat limited. Only those who cultivated the supreme dharmakaya and needed such a material would find it indispensable. Mu Chen glanced at it briefly before looking away, clearly not overly interested. He then slightly turned his head, only to be momentarily stunned when he saw Lin Jing beside him, staring intently at the heavenly fire jade marrow. Her fair, pearl-like teeth nibbled at her plump red lips, and she appeared to have taken a liking to it. However, Lin Jing soon lowered her head in disappointment. She simply didn't have enough supreme spiritual liquid to participate in the bidding. Though she needed the item, the girl didn't hastily ask Mu Chen for help. She was well aware that 1,000 supreme spiritual liquid was no small sum for most people. Biting her lip, she stubbornly turned her face away, choosing to pretend it wasn't there. Mu Chen, noticing her reaction from the corner of his eye, couldn't help but smile, though he remained calm, still seated, his hand gently rubbing the jade armrest as if he had no intention of intervening. 1,200. 1,500. Though the heavenly fire jade marrow was somewhat obscure in its use, it was still a rare treasure, and many were eyeing it. Within less than a minute, the price had already risen to around 1,700 drops of supreme spiritual liquid. Lin Jing, sulking in her seat with her hand propped on her cheek, glared at the fierce competition, muttering, "If I weren't in such a rush to leave home, I'd smash you guys with my supreme spiritual liquid." Mu Chen continued to rub the jade armrest, his gaze sweeping across the room. It seemed that those interested in the heavenly fire jade marrow didn't come from powerful factions. This was evident in how they were bidding, as those with deep pockets wouldn't haggle over such small amounts. This made Mu Chen breathe a little easier. The bidding continued intermittently for a few more minutes before the price finally settled at 2,300 drops of supreme spiritual liquid. The elderly man in white robes looked at the bids, waiting for a moment before raising his hand to announce the result. At this point, the white-clad girl turned her face away in frustration. 2,500. Mu Chen finally spoke, a smile on his face. A few surprised gazes turned toward him. Lin Jing, stunned, quickly turned her face toward him, then bit her lip, muttering something under her breath. The man who had raised the price to 2,300 drops of supreme spiritual liquid furrowed his brow, hesitated for a moment, then decided not to bid further. This price was already at his limit. Seeing this, the elderly man in white robes waved his sleeve, and a bell chime echoed across the auction hall, signaling that the heavenly fire jade marrow had been successfully sold. The auction continued. The young girl in white, with her sparkling eyes, glanced around, her cheeks flushed as she nervously twisted the fan in her hand. She didn't ask Mu Chen why he had bought the heavenly fire jade marrow. She didn't want to risk misinterpreting the situation. She didn't want to embarrass herself. Mu Chen, amused by her restraint, waited for a while before smiling and saying, "It's indeed for you." Lin Jing's cheeks flushed even more. She quickly replied, "Thank you. I'm also cultivating the supreme Dharmakaya, and I need a lot of similar jade marrows." At this, the nine-nether sparrow glanced at Lin Jing, her eyes gleaming with interest. She clearly noticed the key phrase, "a lot of similar jade marrows." Though cultivating some supreme Dharmakayas did require heavenly fire jade marrow, the number of supreme Dharmakayas that needed many similar jade marrows wasn't large. For instance, the heavenly jade Dharmakaya, ranked 63rd among the 99 supreme Dharmakayas, required various types of jade marrows, with heavenly fire jade marrow being one of them. If Lin Jing was indeed preparing to cultivate the heavenly jade Dharmakaya, then the power behind her was likely quite impressive. Such a Dharmakaya would be incredibly attractive even to supreme powerhouses who had reached the 7th or 8th grade. Moreover, though the heavenly jade Dharmakaya, because the supreme Dharma body is so powerful, it's difficult to control, yet being too weak isn't an option either. Therefore, her family must have carefully considered this before having her cultivate the heavenly jade Dharma body. Mu Chen, however, wasn't as concerned as the nine-nether sparrow. After all, he wasn't very familiar with the supreme Dharma body himself, so he simply asked in surprise, "Didn't your family prepare all the materials for you?" The girl in front of him clearly came from a powerful background. The heavenly fire jade marrow, although rare, shouldn't have caused her such trouble. "I want to rely on myself. If everything is prepared for me, what's the point?" Lin Jing said, propping her chin and swinging her long legs. Mu Chen shook his head helplessly. "By the way, I said I wouldn't casually owe anyone a favor." Lin Jing seemed to have thought of something, and suddenly took a jade pendant tied with a red string from around her neck. The jade pendant was a milky white color, with what seemed to be liquid flowing inside it. It appeared exceptionally ancient, but there was an indescribable aura emanating from it. This is a protective spirit jade. It will automatically activate in the most dangerous situations. As long as the enemy's strength doesn't exceed the 5th grade supreme, it can block a fatal attack for you. Both Mu Chen and the nine-nether sparrow were taken aback. Mu Chen was even slightly moved. A pendant that could block a 5th grade supreme's fatal blow? This seemingly simple ancient jade was so powerful? Well, this must be something your family gave you. I won't take it from you, Chen eventually said, shaking his head. He smiled and added, besides, this protective spirit jade might be worth more than the heavenly fire jade marrow. No way. If you don't take it, then I won't take the heavenly fire jade marrow either, Lin Jing said stubbornly, staring at Chen with a serious look that made it clear she wasn't joking. This girl also had her principles. And don't worry about me. I still have another protective spirit jade, she added with a mischievous smile, lifting her delicate wrist. On her white wrist, there was another small, ancient jade pendant hanging. Chen was speechless. He sighed deeply, realizing how well-off children from rich families must have it. They could casually wear such precious protective jade, while he, with nothing but luck and the spirit gathering bowl, probably wouldn't even have the money to enter this auction. Here, Lin Jing handed the protective spirit jade to him. Looks like I've been the one benefiting after all, Chen said with a wry smile. He didn't try to refuse anymore, taking the jade pendant with a complex sigh. Don't sigh like that. You're a true friend, Chen. Lin Jing giggled, giving him a thumbs up. Her fingers were as round and cute as pearls. It was clear that Chen's earlier gesture of buying the heavenly fire jade marrow for her had earned her some goodwill. After all, not everyone would spend over 2,000 drops of supreme spiritual liquid on something they wouldn't even use after knowing someone for such a short time. Also, Lin Jing was sharp enough to realize that Chen wasn't the type to spend that much casually. That made his gesture even more admirable. Though young, the girl's insight seemed to surpass what Chen expected. She was lively and graceful, but not lacking in depth or wit. Chen casually put the protective spirit jade away, not saying much more to the increasingly lively and excited Lin Jing. He simply looked ahead, noticing that in the time they had been talking, 3 or 4 items had already been successfully auctioned. These treasures, including divine artifacts and divine techniques, were no ordinary items, and the competition for them was fierce. The atmosphere in the auction house was growing more intense. However, the void solar fruit and immortal divine leaf, which Chen had been eagerly waiting for, had yet to appear. His brow furrowed slightly. He knew that the later it got, the higher the price to secure a treasure would be. More importantly, the influential figures in the balconies hadn't even made their moves yet. Currently, he had 18,000 drops of supreme spiritual liquid in his possession due to unlocking part of the spirit gathering bowl's seal. Time passed slowly under Chen's anxious waiting. But when the auction item was successfully bid for 7 times, Chen's eyes suddenly brightened. Because he saw that in the hands of the white-robed elder on the stage, a dazzling beam of light emerged. The light was like the rising sun, enveloping the entire auction hall in its glow. A peculiar wave spread out. The entire auction hall fell into a brief silence, all eyes fixed on the intense sunlight. Within that radiance, they could see a fruit burning with milky white flames, emitting endless light. Chen's gaze was hot as he stared at the fruit, his body straightened, and a surge of excitement flooded his heart. He had finally found the void solar fruit. As Chen focused intently on the void solar fruit, there was a stir in some of the nearby balconies. A series of eyes turned toward the stage, clearly drawn by the sight. This is the void solar fruit, as many of you have likely heard. If refined, it will allow the creation of a spirit sun within the supreme sea. Under the spirit sun's radiance, the spiritual energy within the supreme sea will be infused with solar flame power, greatly enhancing one's spiritual strength. I don't need to explain how rare it is. The starting bid for this void solar fruit is 7,000 supreme spiritual liquid. As Ching's words fell, a wave of shock rippled through the crowd. The steep price made many hesitate, yet they couldn't resist the temptation. After all, such a treasure that could enhance the power of spiritual energy was incredibly rare. 7,000 supreme spiritual liquid. Chen's heart sank slightly upon hearing the price. This was just the starting bid. Fierce competition was inevitable, and who knew how high the price would go. He took a deep breath, his gaze sharp. No matter what, he wasn't going to give up easily. If he missed out on this opportunity, Chen didn't know when he would be able to cultivate the great sun indestructible body. Endless light enveloped the massive auction hall, but even then, it couldn't conceal the fiery gazes from around the room. The rarity of the void solar fruit was clearly far beyond that of the heavenly fire jade marrow from earlier. Chen was one of those with burning eyes, but he quickly adjusted his mindset, took another deep breath, and fixed his gaze on the stage. Then, his eyes narrowed slightly. He noticed some movement from the balconies ahead, confirming his suspicion. These heavyweight figures were also eyeing the void solar fruit. Such heavenly treasures that could enhance spiritual power were incredibly tempting for any supreme stage powerhouse. Mo Qing observed the reactions from below and casually spoke. "Everyone, let the bidding begin." As soon as he finished, the hall fell into silence. 7,000 supreme spiritual liquid was no small amount, so only a few could afford to compete, and most were waiting to gauge the situation. However, the silence didn't last long before it was broken. 7,300, a cold-faced middle-aged man called out. His aura was strong, indicating that he possessed formidable power. 7,500, but his bid didn't last long before it was topped. 7,800. The bidding escalated, breaking the silence and causing a stir throughout the hall. Many powerhouses, who had been eyeing the void solar fruit, could no longer hold back and began raising their bids. In just a few minutes, the price had soared to 8,500 supreme spiritual liquid, a sum that made many in the crowd envious. After all, such a vast amount of supreme spiritual liquid could drastically speed up their cultivation. At this point, the number of people still willing to bid quickly dwindled. But everyone knew that the real heavyweights were about to step in. 9,500, when a lazy yet captivatingly soft and alluring voice rang out. Almost everyone turned their gaze to a small balcony in the front. The sheer curtains were lifted, revealing a mesmerizing face. It's Heart Fox Fairy from the Celestial Fox sect. Staring at the alluring, enchanting face that made hearts race, a whisper of hushed conversations quickly spread throughout the auction hall, likely fueled by the rumors of this beguiling woman's renowned beauty. After the woman, known as the Heart Fox Fairy, made her bid, the hall fell into a strange calm. Even many of the strong contenders, who had initially been eager to bid, hesitated, clearly unwilling to offend this woman from the Celestial Fox sect. Seeing this, Chen sighed inwardly and then called out loudly, 10,000. His voice and the price immediately caused a stir in the auction hall. Countless astonished gazes turned toward him, many stopping at Chen, filled with surprise. Clearly, they were trying to figure out who he was, because 10,000 supreme spiritual liquid was not something just anyone could casually offer. In the face of these curious stares, Chen remained calm, his gaze fixed solely on the void solar fruit on the auction stage, ignoring everyone else. On the upper floor, the Heart Fox Fairy's captivating, soul-stealing gaze shifted toward Chen. There was a hint of surprise in her eyes. Chen noticed her gaze and, with a slight tilt of his head, gave her an apologetic smile. The Heart Fox Fairy responded with an enchanting smile, her eyes flickering slightly as though lost in thought. But by the looks of it, she seemed to have no intention of bidding any higher. Since the Heart Fox Fairy isn't particularly interested in the void solar fruit, I'll take it from here. A voice echoed from the nearby balcony, and the previously feminine-looking young man emerged slowly, smiling as he cupped his hands toward the Heart Fox Fairy. Giggle. This little woman's financial means are limited, so I can't compete with you all. Since even the young hall master of Xun'er Palace is interested, I'll step aside, the Heart Fox Fairy said, offering a slight smile. The delicate young man bowed politely, and then shifted his gaze toward Chen. A faint smile graced his face as he said, 11,000. Chen's brow furrowed the moment the young man appeared. This jerk is really annoying. Lin Jing couldn't help but snort coldly. She had a deep hatred for this young man, as he had previously dared to flirt with her. Now seeing him trying to stop Chen, anger surged on her delicate face. Chen, go ahead and outbid him. Even if I don't have any supreme spiritual liquid, I can sell something. Lin Jing clenched her teeth, her words full of frustration. It's fine. If he wants to play, I'll play along. Chen replied with a calm smile, a trace of coldness in his eyes. Although this young man held considerable status in Xun'er Palace, Chen didn't believe this guy could easily throw out tens of thousands of supreme spiritual liquid to defeat him. Supreme spiritual liquid was not something that could be wasted carelessly. No matter what, he had to have the void solar fruit. 12,000. Mu Chun leaned back in his chair, his steady voice echoed across the massive auction hall, causing many to gasp in surprise, their eyes filled with intrigue. It seemed they were assuming Mu Chun was just some young heir from an unknown clan. On the balcony, the delicate young man squinted slightly, a flash of coldness flickering in his eyes. He had been displeased the moment Mu Chun interfered. After all, it was obvious that Mu Chun and the white-clad girl weren't familiar with each other. Furthermore, this guy's strength had only just entered the supreme stage. If it hadn't been for the beautiful black-clad woman beside him, he would have thrown Mu Chun out long ago. Yet here he was, pushing his luck by trying to compete with him. Young Hall Master, what you need most during your visit to the Commerce City isn't this void solar fruit, said the elderly man in black behind the delicate young man, just as he was about to raise the bid again. I know. The young man frowned slightly but still waved his hand, sending his voice out. 13,000. I really want to see where this arrogant guy came from, acting like he can compete with me. The young man sneered coldly. In his eyes, Mu Chun was just bluffing. Such a display of skill immediately caused an uproar in the crowd. Even the Heart Fox Fairy couldn't help but look at Mu Chun with surprise in her beautiful eyes. This young man's approach and ambition were indeed extraordinary. The pale-skinned young man's face grew slightly green, and his eyes suddenly became cold and fierce. He glared at Mu Chun, yet the latter remained focused on the void solar fruit on the auction stage, not even glancing at him. The pale-skinned youth's lips twitched, but he suppressed the murderous intent rising in his heart and was about to raise the bid once again. Young Hall Master. The old man in black robes behind him spoke in a low, serious tone. The pale-skinned youth clenched his fist, gritted his teeth, and finally swallowed his words. His gaze became even more sinister, and he coldly murmured, Mu Elder, remember this person. No one can just casually snatch away what belongs to me. The old man in black nodded slightly, a cruel smile curling at the corners of his mouth. Rest assured, Young Hall Master. Let's consider it as if he spent a great deal of supreme spiritual liquid to buy the void solar fruit for you. The pale-skinned youth's grim expression softened slightly. He smiled coldly and said no more. When Mu Chun raised the bid to 15,000 supreme spiritual liquid, no one dared to compete with him any longer. It seemed his aura had intimidated them all. After a brief wait, the void solar fruit was finally secured by Mu Chun. After Master Mo Qing announced the auction's outcome, Mu Chun let out a sigh of relief. However, he quickly felt a chilling gaze upon him. He immediately turned and locked eyes with the pale-skinned youth in the loft, whose stare was just as cold and filled with malice. If it hadn't been for that guy causing trouble, Mu Chun clearly wouldn't have needed to raise the price to such an extent. He could have still reserved some energy to bid for the upcoming Immortal Divine Leaf. But now, he had expended a large amount of supreme spiritual liquid, and competing for the Immortal Divine Leaf would now stretch him thin. That guy might be thinking of killing you, Nine Nether said suddenly, her long, narrow eyes flashing with coldness. Mu Chun nodded slightly. Though the black-robed elder by that guy's side had the strength of a 5th-grade supreme, defeating Nine Nether would still be extremely difficult. After all, she was a genuine divine beast. As for the youth himself, his strength should be at the 1st-grade supreme level. Mu Chun wasn't afraid if it came to a fight. With that thought in mind, Mu Chun withdrew his focus and shifted his gaze back to the auction stage. Master Mo Qing had already brought out the 9th auction item. As Mu Chun had expected, the 9th item was the final material he needed to cultivate the Great Sun indestructible body, the Immortal Divine Leaf. A light cluster appeared in the withered hands of Master Mo Qing, revealing a leaf the size of a palm. The leaf was dark yellow, with tree-like veins spreading across its surface. It looked rather unremarkable. If it weren't for Master Mo Qing presenting it, no one would have guessed that this was the legendary Immortal Divine Leaf. There was a divine tree in the world known as the Immortal Divine Tree. Its lifespan was so long that it defied belief. This tree stood tall in the heavens and earth, unyielding even after countless calamities. Every 1,000 years, it would produce a single leaf, the Immortal Divine Leaf. It was said that this substitute leaf, crafted from this leaf, had the miraculous ability to grant someone an extra life. Because of this, The immortal divine leaf was highly sought after by countless powerful figures. After all, there were many rare things in the world, but one's life was something only to be valued once. Thus, every time the immortal divine leaf appeared, it sparked fierce competition, and people would pay any price to claim it. Within the vast auction hall, countless eyes were ablaze with greed. If not for the rational thought that violence in such a place would only lead to one's demise, someone might have been driven to make a move to seize it. Master Mo Qing, noticing the countless greedy gazes, spoke in his usual calm tone. Immortal divine leaf, starting bid, 10,000 supreme spiritual liquid. At his words, the entire hall fell silent, followed by a series of sharp intakes of breath. 10,000 supreme spiritual liquid, a sum so enormous that it was clearly not something an ordinary person could afford. Such a divine object. Indeed, only the wealthy could claim it. Chen was also stunned when he heard the starting price. What should we do? Nine Nether raised her brows slightly, her expression reflecting the same surprise. The price was indeed higher than she expected. Moreover, if there were more competition, the price would undoubtedly skyrocket. And the remaining supreme spiritual liquid they had couldn't possibly cover this contest. Chen fell silent for a moment before speaking. Let's wait and see. If it comes to that, I still have some heavenly materials, earthly treasures, and divine artifacts I acquired from the Spiritual Academy Grand Competition. If converted, they could serve as some supreme spiritual liquid. Chen rubbed his forehead. Finally, he understood just how important supreme spiritual liquid was in this vast world. Back at Northern Heaven Spiritual Academy, he had no concept of it. But now, he realized that without supreme spiritual liquid, it was nearly impossible to progress in this world. The spirit gathering bowl he held in his hands was supposed to store a large amount of supreme spiritual liquid. However, the seal on it was so strong that even Nine Nether could only break part of it in the short term. Nine Nether sighed and nodded. She had indeed stored quite a bit of supreme spiritual liquid back then, but it was all used up during her tribulations. So now, she couldn't offer much help in this area. How about I contribute something and exchange it for some supreme spiritual liquid? Lin Jing suggested quietly, glancing over. Although Chen had only used a bit of supreme spiritual liquid to help her by heavenly fire jade marrow, it left her feeling a little uneasy. Chen simply smiled without responding. As they were talking, the auction for the immortal divine leaf had already begun. Just as Chen had predicted, the majority of the competitors came from the prominent figures in the upper levels of the building. Behind them were powerful forces with substantial wealth, and within less than a minute, the bidding had reached a fever pitch. The auction price had already surged to 15,000 supreme spiritual liquid, now matching the price of the void solar fruit. And yet, the competition was far from over. Chen calmly observed the battle. As the price rose, only 3 bidders remained. 2 of them were the effeminate young man and the heart fox fairy from the celestial fox sect. The third was an elderly man in a gray robe, his kind face marked by a sinister black skull embroidered on his sleeve. That should be someone from Skeleton Demon Mountain. Skeleton Demon Mountain is the dominant power on Skeleton Continent, extremely formidable. However, overall, they are a bit weaker compared to our great Luo Heaven Domain and Shantian Palace, Nine Nether explained, recognizing the gray-robed elder. Chen nodded slightly. Tian Luo Continent was a supercontinent, and only top-tier forces could stand out here. Of course, Skeleton Demon Mountain wasn't a trivial power either. Otherwise, the elder wouldn't dare to compete directly with Shantian Palace and the Celestial Fox sect. 17,000 drops of supreme spiritual liquid, the gray-robed elder rasped, raising the price by another 2,000, causing a stir in the crowd. 2 of you, this is my final offer. If you can bid higher, I'll step aside and let the Shantian Palace and Celestial Fox sect have their way, the gray-robed elder said, looking at the effeminate young man and the heart fox fairy with a smile. The heart fox fairy smiled lazily and shook her head. Elder Gui Ku has raised the price to such a point. How could I follow? From here on, it's up to the young hall master Lu Ming from Shantian Palace. Hearing this, the effeminate young man chuckled, his expression one of slight arrogance. In that case, I'll take your word for it. What my Shantian Palace sets its eyes on, others will find it difficult to snatch. As he spoke, His gaze flicked towards Mu Chen's direction, a cold glint in his eyes. 20,000 Supreme Spiritual Liquid, Lu Ming said, looking at the gray-robed elder with a smile. The crowd gasped once more. It seemed that Xiantian Palace truly coveted the immortal divine leaf, willing to pay such a steep price to acquire it. 20,000 Supreme Spiritual Liquid. Such an amount would be nearly impossible for a smaller force to accumulate in an entire year. The price surged by 3,000, causing the gray-robed elder's expression to change. In the end, he had no choice but to sit back down. Clearly, 20,000 Supreme Spiritual Liquid had surpassed his limit. The 9 Nether Sparrows saw that the auction was nearing its end and couldn't help but glance at Mu Chen. The latter narrowed his eyes slightly, a chill rising in his dark gaze. After a moment, he gently shook his head. Clearly, he had decided to give up. If we miss this opportunity, who knows when we'll have another chance. And as for your Supreme Dharmakaya, who knows how long it will take to reach it, 9 Nether said, her brows furrowing slightly. It's too early to say we've missed it, Mu Chen replied with a smile. What do you mean? 9 Nether asked, puzzled. Because someone still wants to greedily take the void solar fruit, Mu Chen said calmly. Since others are targeting us, why can't we target them? You plan to make a move on them? 9 Nether's eyes narrowed in surprise. She hadn't expected Mu Chen to be this bold. It's not that I want to make a move on them, but they will make a move on us, Mu Chen said softly. Are you confident in dealing with that old man? He was referring to the black-robed elder who stood beside Lu Ming. He is at the 5th grade supreme level, 1 grade higher than me. However, with the combat strength of my divine beast, he can't harm me. But I doubt I can kill him, 9 Nether pondered. Lu Ming is at the 1st grade supreme level, and he must have cultivated the supreme Dharmakaya. On the surface, his strength seems greater than mine. So, as long as he has that old man tie you up, he'll likely think he can deal with me. Mu Chen smiled. From the way he bid earlier, this person is arrogant and vengeful. I already embarrassed him earlier, so he definitely won't let me off. Looks like leaving here won't be that easy. Let them try. 9 Nether's eyes gleamed coldly. If they dared target them, she wouldn't mind showing them the consequences of trying to steal from others. Mu Chen smiled again, though his smile lacked warmth. While he didn't want to cause trouble, it didn't mean he feared it. If Lu Ming truly made a move, he would have the perfect excuse to borrow the immortal divine leaf. He wasn't afraid of failure. At worst, he would let 9 Nether transform into her true form and escape. With the speed of the 9 Nether Soul Sparrow, even if the black-robed elder was at the 5th grade supreme level, they wouldn't be able to stop them. As they spoke, the auction for the immortal divine leaf concluded. As expected, it fell into Lu Ming's hands, with the price reaching a staggering 20,000, enough to make everyone else back off. On the auction stage, Master Mo Qing waved his sleeve, and the bell chime echoed. The immortal divine leaf was officially claimed by Lu Ming. Seeing this, Lu Ming smiled in satisfaction. He gently rubbed the armrest of his chair, his narrowed eyes focusing on Mu Chen's direction as he muttered, "A brat still wet behind the ears dares to snatch my treasure. He's courting death." Boom. Once again, a crisp bell chime rang throughout the auction hall. Everyone straightened, even those in the small pavilions. The curtains were drawn back, and all eyes were fixed on the auction stage. They knew the grand finale was about to begin. Many powerful forces had come specifically for the final item. Mu Chen also raised his head at this moment, his gaze curious as he watched the stage. He, too, was eager to know what kind of treasure could follow the void solar fruit and the immortal divine leaf. Under the hot gaze of countless eyes, Master Mo Qing clenched his palm, and a golden radiance flickered.